Well, good morning. It was a great week we had at Vacation Bible School. Jesus is still the game changer. And I promise I won't be the clothes changer this morning. So we're going to begin our service by standing and singing Wonderful Words of Life. Then Jeremy's going to come lead us in prayer.
Sing them over again to me, wonderful words of love. Let me more be singing wonderful words of life. Words of life and beauty, teach me faith and duty. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life. Christ the blessed one gives to all, wonderful words of life. Savior lives to the loving call, wonderful words of life. All so freely given, worthy us to heaven. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life. Sweetly echo the gospel call, wonderful words of life. Offer parted in peace to all, wonderful words of life. Jesus, our only Savior, sanctified forever. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life.
Good morning. I'm going to be reading Psalm 15. There are 5 verses. Psalm chapter 15, if you want to follow along in God's Word. It says, Lord, who shall abide in thy tabernacle? Who shall dwell in thy holy hill? He that walketh uprightly and worketh righteousness and speaketh the truth in his heart, he that backbiteth not with his tongue, nor doeth evil to his neighbor, nor taketh up reproach against his neighbor, in whose eyes as a vile person is contemned, but he that honoreth them that fear the Lord, he that sweareth to his own hurt, and changeth not, he that putteth not out his money to usury, nor taketh reward against the innocent, he that doeth these things shall never be moved. Let's look to the Lord in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful day and this time to worship you, God. We thank you for your goodness to us. We thank you that you love us in our good times and in our worst times, God, that you pursue us because we're your children, and you promised us that you love us and that you'll pursue us when we do go astray, God. We thank you for your love and your goodness to us, and that you are the great creator of this universe, still listens to our prayers, and you hear our words when we speak to you, God. So we just thank you for your love. We thank you for our pastor in this church and the beautiful message that was put out to the community this week. We thank you for the number of volunteers, and that your word would go into the hearts of the homes of kids in the community that need it, and that, God, that it could just spark a revival in the hearts of young people in our community. We just ask that as members of your church, God, that we would also carry that message with us in our own lives, in our workplace, and in our family, God, that we would see people in light of eternity and step up and speak boldly of your truth, God, so that none would perish, and that we could be a difference maker for you, God. So we just Ask that this morning in our message that open our hearts, prepare our hearts, that we would hear your words, listen to your truths, God, and then take them forward with us as we go out the door. So we just thank you again for being a loving God and your goodness to us. And we just pray all these things in your name. Amen. Please be seated. Just to make a few announcements, if you didn't get a bulletin, there's still some back there. But Tuesday, the Generations Fellowship is at the Genera Park at 11:30. So just bring chairs for that, and that's Tuesday at 11:30. Adrian probably has something to say later, but a big thank you to the volunteers and those who spent time and donated food. Just had a part in the good news for the children this week, so thank you for all the volunteers that did that. There is a Hancock County Right to Life newsletter. There's a sign-up sheet if you would like to receive that in the lobby. The toddler room could use a few more workers to help with the little ones. If you have any interest in that, please see Brenda or Pam. I'm sure they need some help, so if that's something you would be interested in, please see them. Friday, or a week from Friday, is the Arlington Fireworks. We will have a get-together here at the church. You can see the fireworks very well from the front lawn, so there will be food provided, and bring a snack or dessert to share. And also Wednesday, the Bolton has a canoe trip in August. See the Moritzes if you'd like more details on the canoe trip.
Good morning. Wow, what amazing week we had at Bible school. Thank you to everyone that made that possible, whether you were serving food, driving the van, doing games, teaching lessons, or even posting our Bible verse and giving updates on our Facebook page. We wrapped up a full year of not only KYB, and VBS. And it truly does take every single person, the behind-the-scenes people. Can't thank everybody enough. Couple updates that I wanted to share with you is in the back of your bulletin. That is where we raised money for this year for Vacation Bible School, and that was the auto racing ministry. He was the guy that came last year, and he was truly amazing, and lots of kids asked the Lord into their heart through his ministry. We were able to raise over $700 towards that. And we had, this year at Vacation Bible School, we had over 100 workers, and we had over 140 kids that came throughout the week, which is truly amazing. I actually had parents calling me because they had a lot of makeup sports events, softball, baseball, and they said, Adrian, I don't know what to do. My kid's crying. They want to go to VBS over their sports. What do I do? And I said, goodness, that's up to you. I mean, I gave my daughter the opportunity she could pick, and she chose Vacation Bible School, and it was kind of neat because I saw a lot of those kids come here instead of their game. And then I also had coaches that called me and said, can you let me know what time KYB is throughout the week, because I want to make sure that I don't have my practices on those nights. So God's truly working in this community. One of the most important things is we had 12 kids that we know of that asked the Lord into their heart through Vacation Bible School. I had a mom call me that was a friend of mine, and she said, Beth actually had several people give their testimonies throughout the week. And one little boy said that he actually gave his life because his aunt had gave her testimony and wanted to make sure that he saw her in heaven one day. So that was, don't ever underestimate the power of giving your testimony. But once again, thank you all. And if you would like to be a part of helping with our KYB, that will start in September. I'm telling you, the kids, you're not only changing their lives, but they'll change yours as well. So thank you.
And Adrian, right back at you. We like to thank you as a church for all you do behind the scenes, too. God bless you. And it's my time of the year, the annual time of the year. I see the newlyweds are back. How about that? They made your way back. It's my time of the year to have all the fathers stand up and to let you know that if you're a father this morning, you're going to get the finest from Hancock County, a Finley's Dietz Brothers ice cream certificate. And let me also say, if you don't want yours, I'll be at the back door. You give yours to me afterward, okay? Let's have the fathers stand up. We're going to recognize the fathers, and then we're going to have Ross Shop come and share his heart with you this morning about what his father means to him.
Did everyone get a Deezus card yet? That might be the most important thing in this next 30 seconds, so if you don't have one, dads, make sure you get one. Hey, I need a second to set up and prepare a few things. I'm probably way over-prepared, and I already apologized to Pastor this morning. So I want you to all talk to the people in your row, people in front or behind you, about some memories you have with your dad, whether they're still with you, whether maybe you haven't seen your dad in a few years, maybe you're not seeing eye to eye right now, or maybe you're sitting right next to your dad. Go ahead and share a few memories, and we'll get started here in the next 2 minutes, I promise. All right, are we ready to get started? I know there's probably plenty more things that you can share. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Ross. I've got Kendon, Mava, Gina's in the nursery, and my lovely wife is sitting up here. We're expecting our fourth child here in the next few weeks. God has blessed us more than we deserve. This morning my talk is going to be way too long. I remember Brian's last year. I've actually still watched Brian's a few times throughout the year, but I think it went 45 minutes. I'm a math teacher. I've been on summer vacation for a few weeks. I teach math for 240 minutes a day, 5 times a week, 183 times a year. Lunch should be ready by Christmas, okay? Lunch should be ready by Christmas. To pay homage to my father-in-law sitting in the front row right here, I thought that I would start with some humor. Sorry, Rachel. One of my favorite things to do throughout the year, it's probably the time of year, but it's June, and life slows down for me a little bit. I'm very busy in the spring, but one of my favorite things to do is go shopping for Father's Day cards, okay? So, I brought a few to share with you. PD, this one might end up on your kitchen table later, okay? How many dads does it take to screw in a light bulb? The answer? Nobody knows. Because instead of just replacing the light bulb, their wife decided to have them tear out the ceiling, raise it a couple feet, install track lighting, a ceiling fan. Take it easy, fathers. There's a pin here that says, I'm the boss, okay? We'll figure out what that means here in a second. Dad, on Father's Day, wear this button to show your position of authority in our family. The button. Don't forget to give it back to Mom tomorrow. Happy Father's Day. Old bearded man here, sitting on top of a hill. It's Father's Day, Dad, so go ahead, nap all you want. For a wise man once said, I'm not napping, I'm just resting my eyes. I've never heard that before. I have one more. This is a riddle for grandpas on Father's Day. What's gray, been around forever, and pretty good at fixing things? Anybody? I expected the answers that I got. The answer to this one? Duct tape. I can't think of anything else that's old, gray, and fixes things. Can you? Happy Father's Day. I'm not done yet. Okay? As a sixth grade teacher, especially being a math teacher, it's not everyone's language. So I like to mix it up with some dad jokes. The more the years go by, the worse I get at them. So it's all about the development of the joke and the delivery. I apologize, Rachel. Okay, my wife just confessed that she broke our favorite lamp last night. I don't think I'll be able to see her in the same light again. Let that one sink, all right? Let that one sink. My wife and I were in an argument this week about whose turn it was to do the laundry. I'm not proud of this, but I folded. She knows that's not true, okay? I will do the laundry, I will not fold the laundry. Sorry. Okay? This week, on a more serious note, this week my wife and I celebrated our 9th wedding anniversary and our 11th since our first date anniversary, if you do those kind of anniversaries. Okay? My wife agreed that to celebrate this year, we would take my baseball team out to Jack and Doe's after a game here in town. I don't tell a lot of people this, but I married my wife for her looks, but definitely not the one she's been giving me for the last 3 minutes. All right, that is the end of the humor, I promise. Should I go sit down now? Okay. What is a hero? Well, a hero is a father in a lot of ways. I've got this thing scripted out. I'm going to go off script, and I'm probably not going to hit all the points I want to hit, but I'm going to do my best to develop who my dad is to me and pay some homage to my grandparents and pay some homage to the direction that they pointed me in my life. You might see me walk by in the hallway. I'm a man of few words, a lot like my dad and my grandpa's. I don't always have the most to say, but when you get me talking, as my in-laws have found out, it can be a long night. So, good news is we're starting at 10:49. What is a hero? A lot of people in the world, especially kids, point towards their favorite superheroes. Batman, Spider-Man, Superman. In my house lately, it's been Paw Patrol, okay? And they decided that 28 minutes of Paw Patrol wasn't long enough. They needed to make movies. We now own both movies, okay? Each different superhero develops a special skill set, has certain tools or things that they have built for them that allow them to protect their city from the bad guys, but also protect the innocent from danger, okay? I never really got much into superheroes, but I know they have a place in the world, and they describe my dad to a T. Tom Brady, don't say anything. Derek Jeter, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, even when he dunked on my high school's team in a district final game and hung on the rim and got a technical. Patrick Mahomes, Jose Ramirez, go Tribe. Steph Curry, okay? All of these guys had qualities about them that would make you think that they were a superhero at times, okay? The short highlights that you see on ESPN, Tom Brady's speech he gave the other night getting inducted into the Hall of Fame for the Patriots. You don't always get to see exactly who they are, but they get those moments because of what they did when no one else was watching. All these sports heroes stole highlights, they won accolades, they received countless interviews, they led teams to the playoffs, championships, Super Bowl rings, World Series. Today I want to share with you a little bit about some ways that my dad developed me into the dad that I am, and I'm still trying to develop into the man that God wants me to be. I'm going way out of order here. This is getting crazy. All right? As a math teacher, like I said, my dad jokes are not very good. Usually, they're defined as cringe by 12-year-olds. If you don't know what cringe means, that's okay. Ask one of the young people sitting in your pew. I guess you could say that life needed to season me a little bit more throughout the years, a lot like the seasonings you're probably going to put on your steak or your burgers this afternoon on the grill for Dad. You don't always learn the lesson in the moment, but as years go by, all of a sudden the message becomes clear of what they were trying to teach you all along. The verse that I want to highlight today is found in Proverbs. There's going to be a few of them as we go, okay? But I want to start in Proverbs 22. I could read you the whole chapter, but I'm gonna get down to the nitty-gritty right away. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Proverbs 22:6. I know Morgan said she was going to cry a few weeks ago when it was Mother's Day. I promise you I won't get through this, so please bear with me. My first early memories, being a little kid. My dad was always trying to develop my heart first and then my head. I've learned from him over the course of 34 years, it's not always what you do, but how you do it. My dad starts every morning exactly the same, with a bowl of Life cereal. Not too far from his bowl of Life cereal, you're going to see Our Daily Bread, which I brought with me this morning. If you read yesterday's verse that goes along with it, Saturday, June 15th, takes us to Galatians 5:13 through 18. Do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh, rather serve one another humbly in love. My dad's done that every single day of his life for me. You'll usually hear the radio playing in the background at the breakfast table, going over the market for crops. He'll read his devotions, and he doesn't know that I ever saw, but I did. Right before he goes outside, we live in a house that's almost 200 years old. It's got a cellar underneath of it. Nothing glamorous. It's dark. It's dirty. Some of the light bulbs flicker sometimes. I need you to look on that, Petey. You're an electrician, okay? Electrical engineer. Anyways, my dad always sits on one of the lowest steps. His head's bowed, and you would think he was sleeping if you didn't know any better. I know better. Before he put on his work boots every single day, took some time to be with Jesus. Sometimes he would leave the door open, so if I was getting up in the morning to go to school, go to a workout before school, do something, he never knows that I saw him, but I was at the top of the steps looking down. I learned a lot in those moments, even though they were short. After a few minutes, he would lace up his boots, run up the steps. If I still happened to be in bed, which as a teenager maybe a few times I would hear the cellar door go, open, close, right? But that wasn't the last sound I heard. You see, my bedroom window was right above the cellar door. You could often hear my dad humming. We're not a musical family. Amazing Grace, or quietly singing a song of praise to start his day, oftentimes before the sun came up. Now, it wouldn't be fair to not include my mom in this. Oddly enough, I don't know if they planned it, but a lot of times, my mom was whistling the same song in the kitchen at the same time. So I don't know where it came from, how it happened, but I was right above the kitchen, and we had our laundry chute that was like a straw right up into my room, and I heard it every day. I've never told him, but I was listening. I was fortunate enough to grow up on a farm in Wayne County, one of the highest elevations in southern Wayne County. Some of you would call it Amish country. It's not the farm that you went to with your grandkids, Pastor Kellogg, but my grandpa would describe it as heaven on earth. 92 acres are left of it. It started as 240, an original plot, back in, I believe, the early 1800s. And I could check on that, but I haven't been to my parents' house in a while. They have the original deed with my great-great-great-great-great-grandpa's name on it, signed by the president. It's not a trophy, but very proud of that ground. Rolling hills with a view. My grandpa Orr, my mom's dad, would come to the farm in his later years. I told my wife about this the other day. A lot of people would come and want to hang out in the house. My grandpa would bring a lawn chair. He would sit on the hill in front of the house, facing the south, where you could see for miles. It's unbelievable. Sometimes he would invite us out to talk about stories from when he grew up at the same house. Sometimes he would just sit there and cry and not say a word. There was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that's gone into that ground over generations, and I was proud to call it home for my childhood years. As a farm kid, one of my earliest memories was going with my dad to pick up my first puppy. His name was Cinder. He was born a day after my birthday, like literally the day I was born. He was born the day after that, and I remember riding shotgun in my dad's truck as this puppy runs back and forth, back and forth, back and forth in the truck. Cinder was a free spirit. When we got home, he taught me how to feed the dog, water the dog, and sometimes clean up after the dog. Never went in the house. Cinder could be gone for 3 to 5 days, running through the woods, chasing whatever he could find, but he always came home. We lived about a quarter mile from a really busy road, and if you heard horns honking early in the morning, it's because Cinder decided he needed to go for a run. And he would chase cars back and forth until cars were honking, and Dad would hop in the truck, drive out, throw the door open, Cinder would hop up and he'd bring him home. Those were the early years. I got to have 16 summers with Cinder. He was my childhood best friend. Until one day, someone showed up at the farm that needed some quick money, and they were looking for a job. My dad was very gracious in people that he hired, always merciful, always gave people second chances, third chances. This particular day, I don't know what made him say what he said, but he calmly told the man that there was not an opportunity for him to work. I think that my dad saw the spirit of the man and didn't feel like it would be a good fit with all of us kids running around the farm to have this person on our property. That man hopped in his Ford Ranger, threw gravel down the driveway, and at 16 human years old, Cinder tried to protect our family one more time. That man ran over my puppy, and that wasn't enough. He backed over him too. And as I stood in the grass and became a quick puddle, my dad put his hand on my shoulder and said, "I'll be back." Cinder lifted his head for the last time and put it down on the pavement. My dad went out and scooped up my puppy. He carried it to the highest hill on our farm, and he put him in the ground. I'll never forget that. Lighter note, as I was able to walk and move a little bit, we lived in a farmhouse. There was a lot going on. Dad wasn't always home. So my favorite words as a little kid before I became to school age was when Dad would come and knock on the back door, crack the door and say, "Hey, Diane," that's my mom's name. Can I take Ross with me today? Sometimes it would happen in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon, oftentimes it was a surprise. I always knew where my boots were. I was ready. One of the first times I can remember a story that my parents shared with me, I was too young, okay? You gotta understand, growing up on a farm, I think that the child seat that I used when I was with my dad was probably well outdated by the time I sat in it. It probably had my dad sit in when he was a kid. It was often tied into a tractor or a truck that didn't have seat belts. The 90s were different. With baler twine and bungee cords. There was one day I was out working with my dad, and he pulled the tractor up next to the house, and he was gonna hop out and get us a snack. So, as most farm implements go, you have to know what you're working with. Dad put on the emergency brake, but it didn't click in all the way. Dad got off the tractor, went in the house. Here's little Ross sitting in my chair, no idea what's going on. And the tractor took off down our half-mile driveway. I don't remember those details at all, but I'll never forget the one thing I do remember about the story. I truly remember this. No photos, I truly remember this. As the tractor was going down the driveway, I remember my dad jumping in front of the big tire that was rolling down the driveway. He hopped up in the driver's seat and he brought the thing to a stop. And I do remember that. I couldn't have been more than 2 years old, but that's one of my first memories. He was teaching me to drive, he just didn't know it. A few years later, my parents' Cub Cadet lawn tractor decided it had mowed its last farmyard, which can happen when you're mowing acreage like that. So my dad had a great idea. He went out and bought a used zero-turn Dixon. I think it had to be hot wired to be started. Wasn't glamorous. I rode for hours in the summertime with my dad because my mom refused to drive that thing. We mowed lots of farms, including the one we lived at. He taught me how to safely mow the hills, directions to go, the ins and outs of turning it on and off. I didn't weigh enough to ride by myself. So when we started out, he let me rest my hands on the little zero-turn bars. He was the one doing the driving. After a few times out, I was the one doing the driving. His hands were on the bars. And after about a year, I bet I was probably 4 or 5 years old, I was the one doing the driving with my dad sitting in the seat. When I got a little older, I think I was in kindergarten or first grade, when I first mowed the lawn by myself, my dad put bricks on the seat, don't tell my mom, okay? I did not weigh enough, and under today's standards, they might have called someone about me being out mowing. There was no seatbelt. My dad taught me another important lesson when we were mowing the grass. It's a process. We started together, he slowly let me take the lead, and then he let me do it on my own. The one thing he didn't give me approval for was one day when he was out working in the hayfield, he was baling, and I was too young to help. The bales weighed more than I did. I had a great idea. I went out, fired the mower up. I was strong enough to adjust the deck. That's the last detail I understood about the mower was adjusting the deck. I put the blade all the way down to the ground, and I made putting greens in the yard. That wasn't enough. I lifted the deck a little bit. I made fairways. Every golf course is only as good as its tee box. So I made tee boxes. The little reflectors on sticks that you usually use to guide people up and down your driveway in the snow, those are my flags. I didn't tell my mom, but I went into the recycling and took out some soup cans. And I buried them in the ground. Flipped them over, took the dirt out, set the soup cans in, those were my holes. My dad pulled in the driveway that night. Our clubs were sitting out by the first tee box. The yard was browner than you can imagine. It might still be brown today, actually. That was like 30 years ago. Anyways, he could have been mad. He could have said a lot of things. Could have yelled, Wasn't going to make the grass come back. So he said, we might as well go play around. He grabbed his clubs, and there we went. Until one day, about a week later, I put a hole in one of his grain bins with a golf ball. He still didn't get mad. One of the highlights of my childhood was Sunday nights. We didn't always go to church on Sunday nights because there were responsibilities that had to happen before Monday morning. You see, Monday morning, my dad would start before 4 a.m. That's usually when they would load the finish hogs out. So a semi would pull in our driveway, and he was up and at 'em well before the semi driver got there to get the lights on, get the ramp set up, and have everything in order so when his employees came, things were ready to go. But Sunday nights, my dad would take me with him to do rounds, not only at our house, but at the farms that were in our care. We would ride with the windows down. Usually the music was blaring, and I would have my hand flying out the window until I couldn't feel my fingers anymore. Then I'd pull it back in. What I liked about my dad is he balanced responsibilities with fun. We would always go to each farm. We'd make sure all the animals were cared for. We'd turn on the augers to fill the feeders for the next day, and that would usually take about 20 minutes per location. In that 20 minutes, we were the Cleveland Browns trying to win a football game. We were the Cleveland Indians of the 1990s. I was Jarrett Wright pitching in the World Series. He was Sandy Alomar trying to catch. I wasn't a very good pitcher when I was young. I got better. He taught me that there are priorities, but you should always have a little bit of fun along the way. As I got older, I was in 5th grade. I had a great coach. Wasn't my dad. He was my first coach, but this guy was a great coach. He's no longer with us. Little did I know that after our season was over, he was going to get in a traffic accident that would take him away from one of my best friends. That was hard. But my dad was always busy on the farm. He couldn't commit to coaching. We could always commit to doing his best to be there, even if it was only for an inning or two. See, as we got to be 5th graders, in my little town of Apple Creek, we got to play the 8 o'clock game. And that means that the lights were on. They would flip the lights on, okay? So we got to play from 8 to 10 o'clock twice a week. And you felt like you were playing in Jacobs Field. My dad was out in other fields. He wasn't there all the time. Like I said before, my dad's trucks weren't glamorous. His tractors were probably even less glamorous. They were probably older than he was. But I always knew what they sounded like. So there's one particular night, it was late innings. My dad was out. I think he was planting corn or planting soybeans. And he showed up in the last inning. Our team was down a run. Hearing my dad's truck roll in and park against the outfield grass got my attention. I was on the mound. I had just walked 2 batters. We had 2 outs. We're down 1. But seeing my dad there made me put my chin up and my shoulders back a little bit. The team helped me get out of the jam. And we were still down 1 going into the bottom of the last inning. 2 outs, runners on first and second. I was a runt. I was small, still am. Left-handed, my favorite player was Jim Thome. I stepped up to the plate, watched the first one go by, strike 1. Took a look out at my dad's headlights out in the distance. And for some reason, I don't really know why, because I didn't have very many home runs in my career. But that night, I caught all of it. It almost took the mirror off my dad's truck. But that wasn't the best part of the night. I had fun celebrating with my teammates. We had fun. Our coach, that was one of the last games he got to coach us in. He gave me the game ball that night, which still sits in my childhood bedroom. But I enjoyed the ride home with my dad. You see, my mom was always there. She was the one that took us around, got us where we needed to go on time. But there's something about when my dad showed up. We would hop in the truck, listen to the Indians finish up their game, and ride home. And my dad never cared about how I did in the game. Not one time did he say, "What were you thinking when you did this? Why did you do this? Why did you do that?" He always pointed out all the positive things my teammates did. And he always showed that he was thankful for my coach. Or he would just sit in silence. My dad taught me a lot in those moments, and he always showed up. A few weeks ago, my team was fortunate enough to play in the district finals. We didn't have a great season, but we finished well. We went against one of the better pitchers in the area in the district semifinals, and even when everyone counted us out, the boys that I'm fortunate enough to coach found a way. We beat the Polar Bears. The morning of our district final game was the last week of school. It was a Friday. I was leaving the house. I just kissed my wife goodbye, and I was headed to the car. Probably about 7 a.m., a little before. And my dad butt dialed me. FaceTime. Obviously, he was already at work, so there were lots of pigs squealing, lots of commotion in the background. He had no idea that I was on the line. But I stayed there for a minute. Dad? Dad, what's up? Dad? Dad? I hung up. I drove all the way to our home baseball field that morning, and we didn't have a home game, but the community that I'm fortunate enough to coach baseball in just invested in our program for the first time in a long time. They had a company come in and laser grade our field and make it look like a field of dreams, like it hasn't looked in 25 years. We hadn't gotten a chance to play on it, but it was the first time I got to walk on it. We weren't going to have practice. It was a school day, but I took a lap around the bases. Wouldn't you know it, when I left home plate, my phone rang. It was my dad. He said, "Hey, why'd you call me?" I said, "Call you? I didn't call you. You called me." It was a short argument. He said, "What are you doing right now? Shouldn't you be at school?" I said, "Yeah, I'm on my way, Dad." He said, "Well, where are you?" I said, "I'm out walking the bases." He said, "Why are you doing that?" I said, "I'm blessed with a lot of good people, Dad, and I owe it a lot to you." We talked about memories, we talked about different things, but it was a very humbling moment. My dad didn't even know we played. He does his best from over 2 hours from where I work to keep track of scores. He's not the most tech savvy, and I'm not the best son at sharing what's going on day to day. He said, "Wow, I didn't know you had a game. I sure wish I could make it. We've got so much going on here at the farm. I don't think we can do it." District finals, top of the second inning. I looked back towards our dugout, and I thought I saw a ghost or an angel, one of the two. It was my dad. He was there. My mom was there. My sister was there. They all made sacrifices that day, and people stepped up to help them, to be there to support our team, to hug my kids, to help my wife. My dad's been there for 34 years for me. I'm sorry if this is getting long. I got a ways to go. 1994, Welty Road. I can take you to pretty much the exact same stones that I was on. See, Welty Road tees into the road that I live on that I could tell you the name of it, but you wouldn't be able to spell it. Lautenschläger. Good luck. After days of practicing with my dad, it started with removing one training wheel. I managed to wreck with one training wheel. After a few more days, my dad took the training wheels off and he said, "You're going to learn how to ride your bike today." He put me on a hill like this, at the top. That's confidence. He ran beside me for as far as he could. I said, "Dad, don't you let go." "Oh, I won't." Till he did. He ran behind me cheering as I probably rode my bike for almost a mile and didn't know how to stop. In 1995, we lived 1 year off the hog farm at another local farm right in our community. We didn't have animals at our house other than my dog. My dad couldn't do that. He knew there was lessons for us to learn. So my dad went out and bought several starter calves that were just weaned from their moms. See, a starter calf still needs milk replacement. They're just getting started on, at least what we feed at our house, grain. So we made a little place in our barn. We did have a nice barn at this farm where we could pen in some cows, and me and my younger sisters learned a lot in those days. Didn't matter if it was raining, the sun was shining, it was hot, it was cold, we had other things going on. We went into our basement and we prepared bottles for each of those calves. Started out as a process that my dad would lead, my mom would lead, but eventually it became on me and my sister's shoulders. We had something to take care of other than just our dog. It took time, wasn't always fun, but those bottle-fed calves turned into strong beef steers. And those beef steers became food on our plates and meat on our grill. He taught us a lot about responsibility and discipline in those days. And that might not have been his intention, but that's what we got from it. 10 to 12 years old. I was probably still about this tall at 10 to 12 years old. I was a runt. Baby blue, 1980-something Chevy 3/4 ton, 5-speed on the floor. Up until that point, when I went anywhere with mom and dad, I got to sit in the middle. It's fun sitting in the middle, especially in a 5-speed. You got to stay out of the way. When we would go to town, there's a place called Johnson's Hardware, old-style hardware store. They had everything. Not a big chain, hometown feel. The people knew you were coming when the bell rang on the door, and they knew your name when you walked up to the desk. When we'd go to town to pick up different supplies for the farm, we would always go around a curve that took you into the the city of Orville. It's a city now, forgive me. And there's a curve that goes right past a pond that my grandpa owned. And I don't know why I ever said it, but it stuck. My sister said it, and I've introduced my kids to it when we drive through. Even when I was sitting in the middle, you always locked the passenger door because you were riding in Dad's truck. It might not be safe. That door might fly open. Don't drop me, Daddy. Those are the words. I don't know why I said them. He's never dropped me. 34 years. In a driveway at a farm in Smithville, Ohio, 10 to 12 years old. He put me in the driver's seat. He hopped in the passenger seat. He said, "Son, you might not be ready to take this on the highway today, but you're going to drive up the lane." He started me in first gear, stall. Restarted it. I'm standing, pulling myself up with the steering wheel, trying to push the clutch and the brake. We got going. Okay, if you've ever driven a standard vehicle, you know you got to be smooth. I wasn't smooth. First gear to second gear, the engine was puttering. I put my foot down on the gas too hard. I eventually got to third gear. We didn't live at this farm, but the people that did ran for their porch. Here comes Ross. See, my dad taught me to do that day. Then a few weeks later, when he had the Dodge 3500 backed up to the machinery shed right outside the house, and he was in the barns taking care of some of the animals, I wanted to get my bike out. You see, the Dodge 3500 was hooked up to a huge livestock trailer. 5-speed on the floor. My dad wasn't there. Push the clutch, push the brake, crank the engine. Every truck's a little bit unique, especially on the farm, especially when you grew up where I grew up. So I thought the truck was in neutral. Truck was in reverse. Feathered the clutch out, thought, okay, I'm in neutral, let me adjust the radio because I'm cool, all right? Nope. I backed right through the machinery shed door. The hardest part was telling my dad. I know he knew, but he waited to to see if I would come and be honest and tell him. I did. And he could have been mad. He said, that door can be fixed. And you do need to learn to drive. But please wait for me next time. It was the process. It was a process. I didn't understand it, but I get it now. In 1999, we moved yet again. We lived in a lot of different farms and a lot of different houses. I'm getting close, guys, okay? We were at our house, and this particular house only had 4-H animals at it. We had steers, we had hogs, we had cats, and we had dogs. That was it. Just enough for me and my sisters. See, there was one particular day, I have no idea why, but I said something to my mom. I don't even remember what I said that I shouldn't have said. And like it was done in my house, like it's done in our house today with my wife and I, there's a consequence that comes with it. So my mom went to give me that consequence. That consequence was 36 inches long, said Alonzo Dior for trustee on it. It was bright yellow. It would probably glow in the dark. And I did the worst possible thing a son could do. I laughed. So then I got another one. And I laughed. So then I was met with the worst words you could ever hear as the oldest son in a family of 4 kids. Wait till your dad gets home. And she said it a lot calmer than I just did. So I went up to my room, not knowing for sure when Dad would get home. I sat up there, didn't even turn any lights on. I didn't play a game, didn't have any fun. I sat on my bed, stared at the ceiling fan. I heard the engine come in the driveway. The lights went across my windows. Dad was home. A few minutes later, I heard that sound that I've heard so many times of him kicking his boots off in the basement. He walked up the steps. He walked up some more steps. Now he was on the main floor. Then he came up the next flight of stairs to my room. He turned the corner, pushed the door open, flipped the lights on. I didn't know what to expect. He came in and sat beside me on my bed. He never raised his voice. All he said to start off was, "Just so you know, I already talked to your mom." I said, "I know." He said, "You want to tell me about it?" And he listened as I told him exactly what I had done. I asked for forgiveness right in that moment. And rather than going and finding the 36-inch enforcer, he put his arm around me. And he said, "I have a feeling you're never going to make that mistake again." And I'm not going to say I've been perfect, but I learned something that day. And I've never done that to my mom again. We're getting close, guys. Winter 2006. I'm a sophomore in high school. If there were 3 sports that I loved, it was football, it was baseball, and basketball was probably third. I was on the JV team. I was short. I could run. I could play defense, but I wasn't much help on offense. I was only as good as my last pass. I wanted to get better. I wanted to earn more opportunities, not only on the JV team, but on the varsity team. See, I'm a coach, and I hear a lot of things from the dugout walls or from the sidelines on a Friday night. But my dad taught me some valuable lessons. If there's something you want, you better be willing to work. After a few scrimmages in basketball that year, I wasn't getting the time that I wanted. My dad could have went and blamed the coach. He could have blamed my teammates. He could have blamed a lot of people. But instead, he looked me in the eye and said, "We've got work to do." My dad worked over 12 hours every single day of his life, pretty much, other than Sunday. That night, that very same night, we went out into the shop. He flipped the lights on. He had different projects laid out, fixing feeders, welding. He had stuff all over. For that winter, from October through March. He put all of his tools, all of his projects to the side, and he only got them out one at a time to keep them in a small space because that was our basketball court. We already had a hoop hanging exactly 10 feet above the concrete floor. The shop is in much better shape now than it was then. It's heated now. Back in those days, it wasn't heated, it wasn't insulated. My dad climbed up a ladder to the very peak of the roof, and he hung a spotlight that shined down right on top of the rim. We measured out where the foul line was. He put in a propane heater, which, by the way, sometimes the smell of propane when it's burning is not always great when you're in a shop trying to exercise and play basketball. So we put up the garage door a little bit to get some fresh air. We played against each other every single night after supper. I don't think we took a single night off. And wouldn't you know it, I got better. He never had to talk to the coach. He never had to blame anybody. I got better at handling the ball, and pretty soon, opportunities came on the JV team. And I'll never forget a night in a place called the Pit when I probably played one of my best JV games of my sophomore year. My varsity coach looked at me after the game when I was changing into my street clothes. He said, "Ross, here's your varsity uniform. I need you to put it on. The team's warming up." I'll never forget running out with the varsity team for the first time. My dad sitting 3 rows behind the bench. He didn't know I was coming out. But I'm pretty sure there were tears in his eyes. I learned something that day. I learned something that winter, and I carry those lessons with me everywhere I go. We're getting there, guys. Summer Friday mornings, my great Uncle Bob, who was in his 70s at the time, still operated the nursery with all the baby pigs. So at my house, currently, I shouldn't say my house, I don't live there anymore. Where I grew up, it is now where all of the baby pigs are born, and then they leave and go to a nursery at a different site. My Uncle Bob, at 70-some years old, was in charge of vaccinating the pigs. As farmers, again, things have gotten better since those days. But back in the day, the best way we could do it was to have Ross hop in Uncle Bob's truck at 6:30 in the morning every Friday from June through August. See, Uncle Bob carried heavy buckets when I think he was, I don't even want to say his age, he was in his 70s. He carried heavy buckets full of materials until his bicep tore. He couldn't do it anymore. They told him he had to take it easy. So my dad had me fill in the void that summer. And I showed up every Friday morning, hopped in his truck, we'd drive up to the other farm, we'd get out, and we'd vaccinate pigs. Now, you'd think, oh, maybe they'll vaccinate these pigs, they're little cute pigs, right? No. These pigs weighed 30 to 40 pounds. At the time, little Ross might have weighed 100 pounds. If you've never held a pig before, you don't know what you're talking about. Hold a pig one time, listen to the squeal, listen to those 4 little legs trying to get away from you for about 10 seconds, and you'll realize you've met your match. Every Friday morning, I get to talk with my great Uncle Bob. We do pen by pen by pen by pen. I was too scared to ask for a break. Sure, my back hurt. My hands were calloused. Sometimes my fingernails would bleed. But I never asked for a break because I was too afraid. But you know what? My great Uncle Bob, he watched me work. And every once in a while, even though I know he was just fine, all he was holding was the syringes, he would say, "Ross, I think I need a break." So we'd go out. He'd have some special Gatorade or Powerade or something in the fridge in the office, and we'd grab a drink and we'd go right back to it. My dad pushed me out the door every Friday morning at 6:30. He taught me something. I grew up going on vacation very rarely. See, when we left the farm, when my dad had a cell phone, he had all of the rooms in his barns programmed to report the temperature in each room. If you didn't know, pigs don't sweat, okay? So they can get too warm, and if they get too warm, the only way to cool them off is with water. So my dad never wanted to go too far away in case something happened where the fan stopped working, the electric went out. We had responsibilities to take care of those animals because they were trusted in our care. At a young age, I remember going up for one of the first times to Rice Lake in Ontario, Canada. If you've never been there before, you probably haven't. The lake is a channel that is 33 miles long, and it's probably only a football field or two wide. We hopped in great-grandpa's little 8-foot boat that probably wasn't seaworthy. The more people you put in it, the closer it got to the water. We would ride across, fill up the gas tank at the gas station across the way, and I was fortunate enough to use the same fishing poles that my great-grandpa Lee used when he was a kid. They were cane poles. See, the cool thing about my dad was he was always the navigator. We didn't have a fish finder, but he would take us out on the lake. It was something we never got to do at home. He'd buy us a little container of worms. He'd bait the hooks. And I'm not sure if the first 4 or 5 times we went to Rice Lake that my dad ever got a line in the water. He was too busy taking care of all of us. And if there's one thing I've learned from my dad, it wasn't just in that fishing boat, but if you follow through what I've seen from my seat in the back of their minivan over the years, it's that my dad is always everyone else's biggest cheerleader, and he never wants to be out front. He's always willing to clap from the back. And that's what he did in the boat. We would bring in all sorts of fish. We would catch all sorts of seaweed. I remember one particular time I threw my line. I had a casting reel at the time. I threw my line up over a tree branch, and I'm pretty sure I was pulling the boat to shore as my dad taught me some valuable lessons about letting the line out and kind of working the line out of the tree. Thanks, Dad, for teaching me things on a fishing boat. There was a White. White is the name of the tractor. It's a 2-135 Field Boss. It's one of the first tractors that was bought when my dad was a kid. We were fortunate enough to have it in the care at our farm. After years and years of use, the modern farmer says, I can do better, and they go out and find something else. My dad invited one of my grandpa's best friends over, and they tore every piece apart, restored the entire thing, and now it's something that we take family pictures at almost every summer. That thing's seen more fields. It saw my first tractor ride as a kid. It was around when my dad was there, and he taught me that just because something's been around for a while doesn't mean it needs replaced. Sometimes it just needs restored. This is the part where I might lose it. October 27th, 2002. I walked into my garage at home to receive a message just as I crossed over the little sensor lights that let you go through your garage. It was a picture of my dad laying in a hospital bed. His leg was all wrapped up, and he was trying to smile to show me that everything was okay. My mom's message said, just so you know, your dad was in an accident today. We'll give you the details later. They've got a lot of things to check on him. Love you, Mom. See, my dad had a rule on the farm that he lived by. No man by himself. There's always somebody else. There's always a job for 2 people, even if one person is just watching and making sure everything goes the way it's supposed to. I wasn't there for my dad that day, but God was. You see, there was a state inspector coming to the farm the next morning to check on the seal on our 500-gallon manure tank. Looks like a big swimming pool, but I would not go inside. You see, my dad tore out the base of it, replaced all the panels, slowly worked his way up, replacing the panels until the entire thing was restored. But in order for the state to give us the check mark, he had to go around, and they have a sealant that you have to put on the seams of every piece of metal the whole way around the whole swimming pool. I wasn't there for my dad that day. His employees were in college studying to be nurses. They had to leave to be to class on time. My dad had a deadline. My dad didn't live by his number one rule on this earth as far as being a farmer, and that was no man by himself. My dad climbed up the ladder on the outside of the tank, put one leg over, put the other leg over. He set a 30-foot ladder that was extended already down into the empty tank. I don't know where his paintbrush was. I don't know where his sealer was. My dad was a hero my whole life. I've watched him jump from bin to bin. I've seen him do all sorts of crazy things I would never even try today. But he did his best to lower himself down in that tank and get the job done before the state inspector showed up. 22 feet in the air. The ladder wasn't put in a good spot on the foundation of the concrete down below. My dad fell backwards. All of his weight landed on one of his legs. Broke a lot of bones in his leg. Ruined his Achilles tendon. My dad shouldn't be on this earth anymore, but God looked out for him that day. You see, somehow my dad came to. He didn't call anyone on the phone. Nobody knew where he was. My dad set the ladder up. And on one foot, he climbed, one step at a time, one rung at a time, all the way out of that manure tank. And then he climbed all the way down where people were looking for him. Luckily, a friend came and found him. So many things could have gone wrong. I was blessed enough over the course of the next 3 months following this date till the arrival of our next child, Gina. Every Friday after school, with my wife pregnant, with our third child, I'd come home. Sometimes we'd go out to dinner. Sometimes I'd read my kids a story. Sometimes we'd play a game as a family. And sometimes Friday night or sometimes in the wee hours of Saturday morning, I hopped in my car in the dark and I drove 2 hours to the place I grew up. And for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and Monday, I was the first person in the barn. I made sure everything was taken care of just the way my dad had taught me to do it for 18 years growing up. You see, I didn't realize all the things I knew from all the years that I was around until I had to do it on my own. Now, luckily, I didn't have to do it on my own. My mom, she became the leader of the farm. She was out there. She knew some things that I didn't know, and she filled in the cracks. But we got it done for Dad. You see, the superintendent at my school is from a farming community. He's from a farming background. And he said, Ross, if you need to take off the whole week, go ahead and do it. I said, nope, all I need is Monday. Give me Monday. See, Monday's the day when you got to wake up a little extra early and you got to load the hogs. And no one, including Dad's hired hands, could drive the big truck with the 30-foot gooseneck trailer up and down the roads. Nobody else could back it in to the transfer station. Nobody else could get the pigs off the trailer without letting them run all over the wilderness in the wild. I didn't know what I was training for all those years, what he was trying to teach me. But for 3 months, I got to show him everything I learned. And all my dad could say, the first time that I walked into his living room and saw him propped up in his chair, he said, Ross, I don't have a lot to say about the accident. He said, all I know, Ross, is that God's not done with me on this earth yet. I've still got things to do. I've still got seeds to put in the ground. I've still got people to help. And I got to make sure I do everything I can every single day to be the man God wants me to be. Brings me on my mind to a verse, James 1, 2 through 4. My brethren, count it all pure joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. See, my dad trained me from the time I was born to be a trained optimist. I didn't know what I was getting ready for. And I know, with the words he shared with me that day in his chair, that I too have lots of things to do. This is my opportunity to thank everyone in this church for teaching Sunday school, KYB, VBS. I was one of those assistant coaches at a ball practice the other night when the coach stopped practice and he said, if you're headed to Bible fellowship, boys, it's time to go. And I watched multiple vehicles pull in and roll out of practice 20 minutes in. There weren't very many boys left at practice. That's impact. That's impact. My wife and I have talked about starting to help lead some of the Sunday school classes. We feel like God's called us to do that. We haven't committed yet, but we're praying about it and we're talking about it. But I'm just a humble farmer out in the field. I'm with 12-year-old kids most days. When I'm done with them, I go spend time with 15 to 18-year-olds. Everywhere I go, I'm trying to plant a seed. Yesterday, my son, Kendon, played his last fundamental baseball game of the season. There were 11 great kids on his team. They weren't all great at baseball yet, but we got to teach them some things about being a good teammate, hustling, and it's okay to be out in the dirt and have a little bit of fun. Mom can wash your uniform when you get home. See, God is putting us all through a process of development, a lot like the olden days back in the 90s when I was a kid, when you'd have to take your film into a drugstore, grocery store, and you drop it off at the desk, and it would be at least 1 hour photo. If not 1 hour photo, it would be, hey, we'll come pick it up tomorrow. And you would get photos that you would take, and you didn't know exactly what they were going to turn out to be. It doesn't mean that all the photos turned out great. Sometimes the light hit the lens wrong. Sometimes someone was making a goofy look. Guilty. Just like when God puts tests or trials in your life, you're not always going to enjoy those moments. But you got to understand, like my dad understood and still understands today, they're to develop you into the person that he wants you to be. You got to figure out when it's time to lead and when it's time to follow. I can't lead if I'm not willing to follow. I can't follow if I'm not willing to step up and lead. You got to build trust with people. You got to be open. And you got to be a magnet that attracts other magnets. I heard a coach say this week, perspective drives performance. Fathers in the audience, and not all fathers have kids of their own. Sometimes you're called to be a father to someone else's kid. It doesn't make you any less of a father. Just like my dad tried to climb down that 30-foot ladder into the tank to finish the job. I ask you today, and I ask you to help me today, help yourselves, help all of us. Make sure, I've heard pastors say this before, maybe in other words, leave your ladder down for your kids. Sometimes you got to go first. Sometimes you got to be at the bottom of the ladder, holding it steady. And sometimes you got to follow them up the ladder. But make sure you leave the ladder down for your kids. How we view what we do drives how well we're going to do what we do. Be the kind of people that do little things. Say hello, shake a hand, give a hug, hold a door. The people you do it for are the people that are going to appreciate it the most. Nothing drives me more crazy than going to Kroger and having to check out my own groceries. Mostly because I enjoy those 3-minute conversations with the lady across the desk. And I'm teaching my kids to do the same. So every time that Kroger offers a lane that has a cashier and a bagger, that's where the shops are going. I want them to learn, because I don't live on a farm anymore. I want them to learn that we have to go out and get our food. We're going to gather it. We're going to put it on the tray. And it's going to work its way down. It's going to be checked out. And that there are conversations that need to be had among people. See, something I told my baseball team, not this season, but last season. It's one of the things we talked about a lot is that people need people. Okay, in the game of baseball, I'm fortunate, blessed enough to coach it for over 10 years now. People need people. One of the dads on my team this week told me, he said, "Hey, Ross," he said, "I know you put pressure in the summer, what position you put kids in trying to think about the future." He's like, "I want you to know something. There's only one pitcher. There's only one catcher. There's only one first baseman, second baseman, shortstop, third baseman, left fielder, center fielder, right fielder. And if you're blessed, you got a designated hitter." He said everybody has a role. And it's up to you to help people find their role in the kingdom. As a man thinks in his heart, so shall he be, Proverbs 23:7. That's a chapter later than the verse I read at the beginning. I got 3 questions as I finish today, and I really apologize, guys. I know what time it is. Dads, fathers, whether your kids are still in your house, whether your kids are raising kids, or whether you never had any kids that are blood, but you're helping raise them. How is your training going for your kids? Question number 1. Number 2, do you show joy along the journey? And number 3, where's the ladder? Where's the ladder? We've all been developed by so many people in our lives. This time, I just want to say thank you, Dad, for teaching me to drive, even though I still call you when I break things, like I did this spring when I was trying to change the oil on my lawnmower. Proud dad moment with me in the driver's seat just the other day. Both my oldest 2 kids hopped up on my lap, and my son at 6 years old did the same thing that my dad did for me. He started with me guiding the lawnmower. By the time we were done, I'd shut the mower off. I had raised the deck up high. We were playing Mario Kart. And even though I love straight rows, just like my dad's fields when I mow the grass, I didn't care where my son went that day. We left tracks all over the backyard. Brian, don't look too close, okay? But my son, with confidence, threw both handles forward, and it jolted us back in our seats. And unfortunately, he forgot that he was the eyes of the operation. So Kendon, you got to know Kendon. He's turned around trying to see what I'm seeing as we almost crash into the play set, then the corner of the house, then the garden. We got it figured out, though. Nobody was hurt. Dad, thank you for leaving the ladder down. I don't know how many more days we have on this earth together, but I'm proud that you're my dad. And I promise you that I'll keep taking it one rung at a time. Thank you for leaving the ladder down. I pray that the table in heaven one day will need more seats and benches than the table in your dining room where Mom fixes holiday meals. Teach your kids to drive. Show them joy. Leave the ladder down. I have props up here that I never even got to. I love you, Dad.
To put you to ease, that is the sermon, okay? If you're not aware, Ross's oldest son is Kendon, named after the gentleman that called me on a Wednesday evening and invited me to come to Arlington, Ohio, several years ago. So this is really personal to me. And I thank you, Ross. That was excellent. Proverbs 22:1 says that a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and loving favor than silver and gold, and that's what we've heard today. So that was special. I think upstairs, David, could you fast forward to the hymn Amazing Grace? And you mentioned your mom and dad sang that, and you could hear them from your bedroom. So why don't we close our service by singing Amazing? Just a second, Ross. It's not finished. I'm supposed to be in Chattanooga by 8 o'clock, okay?
Could I make one more request? If you're a father in this room and you've got a son, when we're done singing Amazing Grace, if it'd be all the same to you, if we could all come up and take a team picture as a group, it'd mean a lot to me.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. Was grace that taught my heart to hear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My time, my Savior has ransomed me, and like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. As promised good to me, His word my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me, and like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. Chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me, and like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending
Okay. Did Ross, you want just the men or everybody? Father, we love you. Thank you so much for what you taught us through your servant. What an exciting time to be a member here at Bible Fellowship Church. Never know what you're going to expect, what you get on Sunday mornings, and we praise you for that. Please continue your great work. I thank you for this presentation from the heart this morning. I've met Ross's father on a few occasions, and he really is solid